a little in-depth look at people power. People power! So I did touch on this somewhat in my video, my pilot episode of sorts, entitled The Rise of the American Dragon, about Daniel Bryan's slow rise to superstardom. But it's not just tied to Daniel Bryan. It's just the climate right now in the WWE, and it's amazing, it's fascinating, it's something that's really, really great to be a part of. It's not always enjoyable at all times, but it's always fascinating. And the reason I'm actually going to go in depth on this is because I'm still hearing people say that chanting and that cheering people or booing people that they want you to cheer is not going to make any difference, that it doesn't matter how loud our voice is, they're not going to listen, you can't change their booking, you can't force the hand of the WWE. And I just think, what have they been watching over this past year, over these past months? Since SummerSlam, especially since the Royal Rumble. There's people that are still saying that the only way to affect any sort of change, make a difference, is for us all just to stop watching. Well, if we all stopped watching, and by we, I mean those of us that are talking about it on the internet, the fans that are passionate enough that they're still going to want to discuss this after it goes off air. If we stopped watching, they wouldn't go out of business. They would still float along, and I think they'd do it quite comfortably because they've got this base audience. Largely, they've got the children, but they've also got the fans who are just going to turn up because it's something that they enjoy. It's just a bit of entertainment, even if they're not hugely, hugely passionately into the product. If WWE's in their area, they're going to go along, they're going to see it. And you got people who maybe they just watch out of habit, if it's on television. We're not going to be able to really affect their bottom line all that much. Now, we do make a difference, because that sounds like, that we really are the 10%, as Eric Bischoff would say. Well, we're not. It's just that there aren't that many people that are going to be willing to stop watching. A lot of us passionate fans are part of that base audience because we just don't have the heart to stop because we love it. And I hear some people say, if you don't like it, just leave, the whole love it or leave it thing. I think that's incredibly foolish. Because if you really love something, then you want to see it improve because you know how good it can be. And you don't just want to abandon it and walk away. You want to do whatever you can to make it better. And that is what we're doing right now. I mean, how can you miss it? You look at Daniel Bryan. He would still be in the Wyatt family probably now if it wasn't for people power, if it wasn't for our voice being heard. And how can you not hear it when it's deafening? It's not just the people who are attending Raw. It's also those house shows. From every report, people really, really were yearning for Daniel Bryan to be Daniel Bryan, for them to be able to join in and do the yes chant. That's what a lot of them paid their money to come along and do. They see it on television. It looks exciting. It looks like fun. And that's what they wanted. And so that's what they got. We managed to get that changed. We managed to get Daniel Bryan where he is because of our support when he was not the person handpicked for that sort of fan support. So that's Exhibit A for a American Dragon. Then we have Exhibit B for Bautista, which I've already been through. And if people say, oh, they're not going to listen to us, well, they have, because Batista is now heel. And how could they not? It's not just a case of, are they going to oblige us? Are they going to be kind enough to listen to us? Sometimes they really don't have much choice. I mean, are you going to put this guy out there week after week and on these pay-per-views or whatever we're going to call them these days, when he is being booed out of the building? Sometimes, one Raw, they didn't even have him go in front of the crowd. They just had him backstage because they knew what the reaction was going to be. I don't blame people for being so disheartened into thinking that we really do have no power at all, that Vince McMahon's will is his will and nothing's going to sway that. But that's just not the case. That's just not how wrestling works, whether they want it to work that way or not. What can you do when your show is being just littered by these boos and it's embarrassing? It's got to be embarrassing for them to put these shows out and have it go that way. I mean, when it comes down to it, they've still got to be able to tell a story, and the narrative is completely destroyed. Imagine if you're a new fan and you're tuning in. What the hell are you going to think? How are you going to know what's going on? And you think they want that? To not be able to actually get any more new fans? Just to have the audience that they've got? No, of course not. They need the new fans. They need these new people to start watching and think, yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm into this. I want to become part of this. See, we're essentially holding them at ransom. And it's very important to understand who this we is. Because while it started out as the most hardcore fans and the passionate internet fans, it's spread. It's spread because it's now something that other people can join in with. And maybe they're actually having to think about it and thinking, you know what, these guys have got a point. Daniel Bryan should be positioned in this top spot because It's not just them who loves him, we love him as well. One way I've heard this framed is this as though the crowds have become self-aware. And I love that, because that's how it feels to me. It feels as though all these people have realised, hang on a minute, we actually have a lot of power here. You know, we don't just have to sit there and mumble and grumble to each other. We can actually make our voice so loud that they have to listen to it. And when has this happened before? You know, the naysayers and the doubters who say, look, it's not going to happen, it's not going to work. What are they basing this on? Because when has this ever happened? I've heard about the "We Want Flair" chants those days after Ric Flair left WCW to go to the WWF, and there was a huge outcry for him at every WCW event. And I don't know exactly the time scale, but he eventually went back to WCW, of course. But when has this happened within the WWF that you've just had this many disgruntled fans that are, you know, I don't really like the term hijack, because I feel that they're only doing what their right is to do, and that's just to cheer who they want and to state their opinion. And how many times has WWE been telling us this? You have the right to express your opinion. Well, sorry, but that's what they're doing now. And to chant the name of the people they want. And that does bring me to one thing. Because we have great power, but with great power comes enormous responsibility. And if I butchered that phrase, it's because I'm not much of a comic book fan. But yeah, the random chants, look, sometimes as a sort of act of protest, it can be brilliant. But if you're going to protest, you need to be actually having a clear vision of what you're protesting. So you're chanting it when they give us a Randy Orton versus Sheamus match because it's tired and it's unimaginative, and they're not taking any risks and just thinking, well, we're going to go strike while the iron's hot. No, they're just sticking with their status quo because they think it's easy money. And so if you want to chant for Randy Savage, then great, you do that, and it obviously gets under Randy Orton's skin. I can be on board with that. But sometimes it just feels too much like people, they just want to be hipsters, you know, they just want to try to feel edgy. They want to copycat what other crowds have done when other crowds have done it with more of a purpose. And so sometimes when they're chanting things during great matches, I don't chant it during great matches and with fresh competitors. What's the point in doing that? You know, it's like the people chant Husky Harris at Bray Wyatt. When you go to the cinema, do you do that as well? He used to be a different character in another film. You know, they might as well be chanting, we hate immersion. So, no, I'm not on board with that. And I don't think it's going to be prominent enough to actually destroy this movement. And I don't mean this silly corporate yes movement, but this people power movement. I don't think it's going to be enough to derail it, but it can make us look like fools. It can make us look like we just want to, you know, we just want to screw up the show just for the sake of putting ourselves over. But I'm willing to put that down to growing pains. We've learned how to talk, we've discovered we have a voice, and now we're just getting to grips of how to use it. Which brings me on to Exhibit C, Punk. Well, they say that absence makes the heart grow fonder. And there's no clearer evidence of this than the whole CM Punk fiasco since he left. Since he took his proverbial ball and went home with it. I'm not actually going to talk about the merits of chanting CM Punk. Because the thing is, he left of his own accord. He was the guy who decided he'd had enough. And it wasn't as though he'd had enough of being mistreated either. Obviously, I don't know all of the details, only he does right now, but it's not like they forced him out. So if you're chanting it to show your respect, then yeah, sure, do that. But it feels to me like it's some sort of protest. Like they're saying, yeah, you hear that, Vince? CM Punk, that's what we want. Well, that's actually what Vince wants as well. What I'm going to talk about is the upcoming Raw in Chicago. And I'm recording this on Saturday, the Saturday before that Raw. Because I don't know of any event in the past. Oh, actually, I guess I do. You could say ECW, the second one night stand, which is a silly concept in itself, of course. But yeah, ECW in 2006, and to a lesser extent, the first Bautista incident, which was when the WWE ECW went back to the Hammerstein Ballroom, and the main event was Big Show versus Batista. And that was fun to watch for exactly the same reason that Monday Night in Chicago is going to be fun to watch. But this is on such a larger scale. And this is where our power is really coming into play. And everyone's fascinated to see how they're going to handle it. And as I say, this is unprecedented. Has not happened before. In such close proximity. We had Daniel Bryan and his mistreatment, both in the storyline and seemingly in reality, and how that galvanized fans, and then CM Punk walk in and the outcry for him. It's just this, what I love about it is there's this spirit of rebellion. It's like there's a revolution in here, and again, it's a sign of the times. I think that, you've got the Occupy movements, you've got this whole 1% versus the 99%, and it's just part of our culture right now. And I love the way this is all coming together. And Monday night, to me, it's the people versus the giant corporate machine that has become too old, too clunky for its own good. And when I say too old, yeah, there's implications of Vince McMahon. But it's not just him and his age. It's also the company at large. And it is so large. It's this corporate monster now. And it seems to be so preoccupied with its image and with its corporate sponsors that the fans, who make all of it possible, it seems like they're just not being represented so much anymore. That there's this lack of willingness to adapt to the times, to the climate, to just go with the flow on certain things. And it leaves the fans feeling disenfranchised, and it builds, but then eventually that pressure just creates a rebellion, and it is glorious. And maybe they decide to weather the storm on Monday night in Chicago, but in WrestleMania? That's what it's coming down to this year. Batista versus Randy Orton, they can't put it on last. You want to say we can't affect change? If we couldn't affect change, that would be going on last regardless. But they don't want their flagship show, the 30th WrestleMania of all things, to just be absolutely shat on. So in summation, please, don't listen to those naysayers who say that our voice means nothing, that we can't make anything change, because the change is right there in front of our eyes right now. If we did what they're counseling us to do and we just stopped watching and we stopped showing up, there would still be enough people watching and enough people showing up for them to float along and stay in business. But think of the product they'd be putting out. I mean, where would Daniel Bryan be on that card? Where would Cesaro be on that card? Where would Batista be? I think we know where he would be. Well, he'd be on top of the world, looking down on creation. And the only explanation that I can see is that they would no longer have that pressure from the fans. So why would they then cave to this pressure? Why would they now cave to this outcry that's no longer there? When they've got these docile fans who are still going to turn up and they're still going to pay the money. Well, then suddenly we'd start seeing what we want when we're now no longer in the picture. It just doesn't make sense. And I say that the real proof is in the pudding. I don't understand that metaphor, but the pudding is on our screens every week. And watch on Monday, watch in Chicago, and I don't know how to finish that metaphor. The pudding is going to be delicious and very fun to eat.
Well, I've enjoyed this. Have you enjoyed this? Of course you have, because you're smarter than the average fan. You're the thinking fan. Give yourself a round of applause. I love you guys so much. I'm just here to entertain you. I do it all for you, the people. Doesn't it just make you sick when they pander to you like that? We can see straight through it, can't we? I'm doing it again. But this is why next week I'm going to be looking at WWE's apparent inability to make likable baby faces. Baby faces that don't make you want to puke. And to a lesser extent, credible heels. But unlike the WWE of today, I am flexible. So if something comes up and changes all of that, well, then I might just have to go with something else. So until next time, I've been your host, the self-proclaimed IWC champion of the world, Rick, don't call me violent, David. And although my reasons are less than altruistic, I would really like to be doing this show for more than 1 or 2 people. So hey, do me a solid, give it a like if you like it, subscribe to my Rick and Wrestling channel, and if you're so fortunate as to have a friend, well, tell them about it. And if you have 2 friends, well, lucky you, tell them too. Much love, peace out, safe journey home, take care, bye-bye.
No, they're saying
Bautista.
Are you saying boo or
Bautista.
I was saying
Bautista.
Deal with it.
My name is Mr. John Laurinaitis. It's not Laurinaitis. I don't know why you keep saying that. And I would like for everybody here to subscribe to Rock and Wrestling, to Rick and Wrestling. Just click subscribe. People power.